Okay, you guys, here we are on the multiplying with radicals page. Here, the beginning has some examples to kind of help us warm up a little. So 2 times 5, that's 10. 2 times rad 5? Well, remember, radicals act like a variable. So if I have 2 times x, that's just 2x. 2 times rad 5, that's just 2 rad 5. Rad 2 times 5? Well, that's just rad 2 times 5, except I like to put the non-radical portion first and the radical portion second. So 5 rad 2. 2 rad 3 times 5? Well, I'll multiply the numbers that are not in a radical and then the radical. That stays separate. Okay, now over here, I have 2 rad 3 times rad 5. Well, the numbers out front can multiply by each other. In this case, it's just 2 times, there's a 1 there, 2. And then the radicals can multiply by each other. Radical 3 times radical 5 is radical 15. And now here we are. Whole everything together. The numbers in the front can multiply. 2 times 4 is 8. And then the radicals can multiply. 3 times 5 is 15. We do want to make sure when we multiply radicals that we can't reduce it, what we get. But in this case, 15 is just 3 times 5. I'm not going to have any pairs, so I'm not worried about reducing. Okay, number 1. I have 4 rad 6 times a rad 6. So the numbers out front get multiplied. That's just the 4. And then the numbers inside multiply. So the rad 6 times a rad 6 becomes a rad 6 times 6, okay? Now, in this situation, when I identify a pair under the radical, I'm gonna take it out. So this is just 4 times 6, which is 24. Negative rad 5 times rad 20. The negative is outside the radical. It's going to stay outside the radical. Radical 5 times radical 20 is going to become radical 5 times 20. Now, I don't see any pairs there yet. So what I'll do is I'll just keep going. This is a negative radical. 5 times 20 is 100. Well, now you may recognize that the square root of 100 is 10. If you didn't, no problem. You would do a factor tree to get 10 times 10. You might see the pair right there and say, okay, that's 10. Oh my gosh, that radical didn't belong there. This is just a negative 10. Sorry. We don't square root and keep the radical. After we square root, we get rid of the radical. If you didn't notice the pairs with the 10s, well, no problem. You could have kept going. Call it 2 and 5, 2 and 5, and then pair them up. You got a pair of 2s and you got a pair of 5s. So that means that a 2 comes out and a 5 comes out. If you're having trouble with this reducing part, go back to the videos with the reducing, okay? 2 times 5 is 10, so there we are. Arrive at the same answer no matter which of the 3 ways you did it. So, negative radical 2 times radical 3 will be negative radical 6. And that's not going to reduce. 4 times radical 8 times radical 2 will be 4 times radical 16. And since radical 16 is 4, I multiply that by the 4 I already had, and the final answer here is 16. Radical 12 times radical 15. Okay, when I get big numbers like this, sure, I can multiply them out, but I'm going to multiply them out only to break them down in my first step, right? Because that's what we do with these. So I actually don't multiply them out. I personally leave them like that. And then I'll do a factor tree right here. You can do that if you like. If you think I'm crazy and you don't want to do that, no problem. Get your calculator, multiply 12 times 15. You will get 180. And then you can do a factor tree on 180. and I promise you'll get the same answer that I'm about to get, okay? So I'm going to break these numbers down, and I'm going to kind of combine their factor tree. So 12 is 3 and 4, and 15 is 5 and 3. The 3 is done. The 4 can keep going to be 2 and 2, and the 5 and the 3. We're done. So I'm going to treat this whole thing as one factor tree and look for my pairs. So I'm going to start highlighting the pairs because they separate. So I have a pair of 3s right there, and then I have a pair of 2s right there. So that means that 5 is alone. So my pair of 3s can come out as just 1 3. My pair of 2s can break out of prison and be just 1 2 on the outside. But that 5 is alone, and it's going to stay inside the radical. Perfect. A negative 3 rad 5 times rad 20. That's negative 3 radical 5 times 20, which is 100. And the square root of 100 is 10. Again, you guys, if you can learn the first 15 perfect squares, your life will be so much easier because you'll recognize them. This is negative 30. Oh, I skipped number 6. Let's go do that. Here I have rad 5 times negative 2 rad 5. So the negative 2 is a negative 2. Rad 5 times rad 5 is rad 25. Sorry, you can't see that. There you go. Now you can see that. So square root of 25 is 5. You always multiply when you get things next to each other like that. And that becomes negative 10. And in this one, I have square root of 15 times 3 rad 5. So this is 3, because the 3 has nothing to multiply with. It stays 3. And 15 times 5. Now again, you can multiply that in your calculator. And what you'll get is 75. And that's fine. But I like to keep them separate because I know I'm going to separate them in the first step. So this 15 is a 3 and a 5, and that 5 is just 5. So here's my factor tree. These are the numbers. I've got myself a pair of 5s and a lone 3. So the pair of 5s means 1 5 comes out, multiplies by the 3 that was already there, and that lone 3 stays inside, and we get 15 radical 3. In this problem, I noticed that the square root of 9 is just 3. So this is 3 rad 3. Easy peasy. If you didn't notice it though, no problem. You would have multiplied these two to say square root of 27, but then you would have done a factor tree and given me the same answer. Okay? So don't worry about the way you do it. Okay, and now here, negative 4 has nothing to multiply by. It stays negative 4 on the outside. 8 times 10 is 80. All right? I would normally keep it separate, but I do want to do one for the other people who like to multiply. So 80, and I'll break 80 down into 8 and 10. And that's 2 and 4, and that's 2 and 2, and that's 2 and 5. And holy moly, let's take a look. I have a pair of 2s right there. I have another pair of 2s right there, and I have a lone 5. So a 2 comes out. There's a negative 4 that's already there. Another 2 comes out. And then the 5 is staying inside. And so this is negative 16 radical 5. Negative 4 times 2 times 2. And that's it. Okay, I'll do the next worksheet on the next video.